Welcome to module number 5, video number 2. We're going to talk about how to do link builder. Now, if you missed the previous video, as always, go back and watch it because I explained all the fundamentals, all the essentials, all the components of good quality links and link building. If you don't know what they are, then well, none of this will make any sense because I'm not going to repeat myself again. So getting back into it, okay, how exactly do we build these links? So starting off with a few considerations that you want to make before you get into this. The first one is what links, how many, different factors like that, right? So how many links do you need to build? How fast should we be building them? What anchor text should we be using? How relevant do they need to be? And different factors like that. You also have the destinations. Which pages do you want to link to? And then also you have the link types, right? So is this going to be guest posts or broken links or skyscraper technique? How exactly are you going to build these links? What types? Now, the way to achieve this is realistically what I call a link gap analysis. And it's just a very simple way of looking at the competition and determining what the optimal strategies to use because every single keyword is different. So again, let me open this up and let me show you what a link gap analysis is. So if I open up my screen right now, you can see this. This is not a link gap analysis. This is just a setup to how exactly we do this. But basically what we do is we pull in our own site's data, and obviously this is just an example what it's not my site, versus a competitor number 1, 2, and 3. We pull in different things like the brand name, whether it's an inner page, the domain rating, the site-wide referring domains is RD, and different factors like this. Out of this, we automatically put in, say, the keyword, the partial keywords, the miscellaneous anchors, and just different factors like this. What this ends up doing is it goes through for each of the links the client has and automatically determines, what anchor text this is. Same for the competitors, and it also calculates how relevant the links are basically for each of these individual links, from 1 to 3. And then it spits all this data out into the competitor analysis sheet we're looking at right here. And this is our classic link gap analysis. Now, I'm going to give you guys a copy of this spreadsheet. So you literally go ahead, copy this, and start using this for your own sites and your own clients. You'll find a link for that in the description below. But beyond that, let's go back to the presentation and let me explain how exactly you're going to use this thing. Well, the first question you're probably asking yourself is how many links do I need? Well, there's a simple calculation for that. If we open up again the link gap analysis, there's two things you realistically want to look at. You want to look at the site-wide referring domains. And you can see here, currently our client has 194, number 1 has 261, number 3 has 1,007, and number 3 has 118. Now again, this is for a specific keyword that we looked at, but you can see here the gap currently is minus 268, meaning that we need to build roughly, if we want to compete, 268 referring domains. Now, is this actually true? No, because this one here is a massive outlier, and the other two are 261 and 118, so we're probably right around the level we want to compete at anyway, but this is just a data-centric approach of analyzing the competitors and figuring out what the approach to do. This is site-wide, so this is overall just to compete with them overall for every single keyword across all the different pages. But also we have, for the specific page, we have, of course, the page level referring domains, and this is where we're massively behind. If you have a look at the first site, again, this is presumably our site or our client website here, we currently have 5 referring domains to this specific page. However, we go ahead and look at the competitors, they have 98, 59, 39, given an overall gap from ours at 5 to theirs on average at 65.33, a gap of minus or negative 60, meaning that realistically we need to build in the region of 60 referring domains to this specific page if we want to compete again against these 3 competitors. You can also look at the domain rating, which really just is a measure of these referring domains and the quality of them. But you can see here that we're currently also at a gap of minus 18.67. So again, we realistically just need to build a lot of links, not only to this page you can see here, but also to other pages on the site. But if we wanted to estimate and just use this as a ballpark figure, then we could just say very, very simply that we want to build 268 referring domains, which is quite a significant number, but obviously that doesn't really account for quality, which is where we can scroll down to this section here, and I realize this may be getting a little bit more technical, but nevertheless, let me go through it. And you see here for the domain rating breakdown, again, we're doing this for one specific page, but we can also do this for site-wide as well, just to get a rough idea of what you have to build again to compete altogether for these competitors. You can see here that despite up top here saying we're 60 referring domains behind our competitors, for the most part, the competitors have very, very, very weak links. And we can determine this because as soon as we start looking at the number of links they have to the specific page, you can see here that on average, we need that I do follow as well. We have 5 for this competitor that are DR60 plus, or an average of 3.33 that are DR60 plus. Again, domain rating of 60 plus, which is a really, really strong link. You have 0.672 and 00 for DR50 plus. DR40 plus is 2.67, DR30 plus is 1.67, and so on. What this does is it checks for do follow links. We mentioned previously you can have links that are no follow, sponsored, things like that, and those, again, they can pass some benefit, but it's not nearly significant as a do follow link. So by looking only at do follow links and counting up here, we can see actually the gap is relatively insignificant. It really isn't that much to compete against. We can say we need 2 of these, 2 of these, or 3 of these, and 1 of these, right? Very, very simple. So this just really tells us for this specific page, despite it looks at the top like we need to do a lot, and our domain rating is lower, and our site-wide authority referring domains is lower, but realistically, for the specific page itself, we don't actually need to do that much. Another question that I practically just answered anyway is, should we build more links to this specific page or another page? And again, going back to the data, what did we determine? We determined that we need to build, again, 2 or 3 DR60 plus links, 2, 3 DR40 plus links, and 1 DR30 plus link. I don't really count these lower ones. They're pretty weak links altogether. But even if we added all these up, basically, it says we need to build around 9 links additionally. So in this specific case, we want to build more links to the specific page. However, in certain cases, you'll find that actually maybe you have more in all these levels, and maybe you get up to here, the page level referring domains, and maybe actually you have more on average than your competitors. If that is the case, do you want to build more links to this page? No. And the reason you don't want to do it is because statistically, your competitors have less links to this specific page. And instead, you want to look at the overall site-wide referring domains count. And you probably see they're higher there. And in which case, you want to build links to other pages and then internal link them. That's where it gets a bit more nuanced. Because I mentioned in the previous video that you want to link to the page you want to rank. And that is absolutely true if it makes sense. The only reason it wouldn't make sense is because by doing that, it looks unnatural. And it looks unnatural if all your competitors have 5 links to this page and you have 50, right? It doesn't make sense. So if all your competitors on average have, say, 5 to 10 links to this page, and you have 10 links to this page, or you have 15 links to this page, stop building links to this page, start building links to other pages instead, and again, use internal links to power up this page. It's not as ideal, it's not as effective, but it is more natural. Again, you don't want to stand out against your competitors. You want to see what is working. You want to mimic that. And again, realistically, you just don't want to stand out because, again, it's a clear sign that something is up. Another determination we can make here is how aggressive can we be with our anchor text. I mentioned previously that you want targeted anchor text, meaning if your keyword is fried chicken, then you want your anchor text to say fried chicken or delicious fried chicken or have fried chicken within the anchor text. However, you can't do that 100% of the time because it just leads to over-optimization, which can lead to other potential issues. So what you can do is you can look at your competitors and you can see what exactly are the ratios that they have. For example, you can see here this competitors on average have only 0.68% of their anchor text contain the keyword. I can't remember what the keyword is. I think it was best table saw here. So only 0.68% of the time did include that, which is basically this one competitor here. They have it 2 times out of all their other links you can see here, right? So it's very insignificant amounts. But branded, on the other hand, is being used 6.82% of the time, meaning that you want to have your brand name in the anchor text maybe around 7% of the time. In this case, a client or example site is SEOadvisor.com, so we want to use SEOadvisor in the anchor text about 7% of the time. You can also look at other factors here as well, like the URL anchor text. You see here, this is currently 35.58% for our competitors, and we're at 40%. This is there or thereabouts even, considering we don't have many links whatsoever. You see partial anchor text. What is partial target anchor text? So partial just means it includes part of the keyword. Our keyword in this case is best table saw. So what is partial anchor text? It's basically any one of those words or any parts of that phrase, right? So best table, right? Table saw, or even just best or saw, right? They're technically still partial keywords. So it's basically just part of the keyword, not the entire keyword. You also have topical, which is anything around the overall topic that's relevant to it. So for example, if you're trying to rank for iPhone review, then you have cameras and LCD screen and batteries and so on, that that's not really the keyword, but it's absolutely relevant to the overall topic. We also have long tail, which is basically just the keyword as part of a longer phrase. So again, if your keyword is table saw, best table saw, then you could say, what is the best table saw, or best table saw under $500, or I don't know how much they cost, but basically it's just the keyword as part of a longer phrase. You also have empty, which isn't something you deliberately build, but it is something, again, you want to measure. And basically empty is usually because they have an image link and the image doesn't have an alt text. If you don't know what alt text is, then you can go back and watch your on-page videos. But basically it doesn't have an alt text and there's an image there, so it's empty by all definitions, right? And also we have miscellaneous, and that's just your typical click here, visit website, go to website, check this out, things like this, right? It's not optimized in any way, it's just like miscellaneous type things that don't really fit into the above categories. So by looking at this based on what our competitors are doing, we can get a pretty good idea that this is the average ratio that we want to aim for, and this is our current ratio right now. And we can basically just look at this and make determinations of what to focus on next. So for example, look at this right now. I can see we probably have to do more empty. That's not something we can control. So what can we control in here that is a little bit behind? Well, branded. So we're going to build another link. Let's get a branded link in there. And let's just, for example, let's just change this over to 1. And you can see what happens here. This brings it up to 20%, which is massively over, but it doesn't matter because there's only, what is this, 5, 6 links, so it doesn't particularly make any difference. But basically we just start using this data here to determine what is the optimal anchor text profile based on the competitors, and of course allowing us to really see how aggressive we can be with the anchor text. Again, we want to be aggressive, we want to get targeted anchor text in there, but we want to do this in a safe way that isn't going to damage our sites or our clients' websites. You also may want to know how relevant you need your links to be. So what we also do down here, if you scroll down to the relevance breakdown, you can see here low relevance, mid relevance, and high relevance. And you can see here currently our competitors are actually pretty even between low relevance and high relevance. How do we calculate this? What we do is in the settings you write in here your main keyword, which is best table source. So what we do is we look for examples of using that in the URL or part of that in the URL. So let's just open up an example here, scroll across, you can see here relevance is 2 automatically, right? And the referring page says best table saw, right? So actually this should realistically be 3, I'm not sure why it's 2. But you can see here, this includes best table source, so it's a high relevant page, right? Versus this one here, which 7 online marketing tips to grow your furniture business, right? So this gets a relevancy of 1 because it doesn't include the keyword or any part of that keyword. This one here, the best table saw fence in 2020, this should be a 3, and for some reason it's a 2, but basically this is how we're auto-calculating it, apparently wrong in this case, right? And you see other examples here. Again, we're doing the same thing. Jet table saws review. This should be a 2 because it doesn't include best table saws, but includes part of the keyword, which is table saws. Right, so basically we're analyzing the page relevance, not the overall site relevance, because there's no real way of doing that with this tool we built. We can probably do it in a different way. So we're just looking at the page relevance and then making determinations of how relevant our links need to be. And the way we can control that later is that we can get really, really relevant links, as in we can add a link to a really, really relevant page, or we can guest post for sites that are super, super relevant. Or if we don't need to be that relevant with the page itself, then we can loosen up a little bit and get some kind of maybe cheaper and easier links that aren't quite as relevant on resource pages and other pages that aren't quite as relevant but still have decent authority on that page and site overall also. But again, looking at this, we can basically say that we can actually get away with, currently we're at 80% mid-relevance, actually we can get away with a little bit more on the low relevance side because our competitors on average have really, really low relevance of 43%. So we can actually get away with being a little bit on the lower relevance side, or maybe in certain times you have really, really high relevant competitors, and again, maybe we want to focus on a little bit on the higher relevant side instead. Another good question you should be asking is how fast should we build in these links? How many links do you need to build every week, every day, or every month, right? So here's how you calculate that. And this is something that we're about to add to the sheet. We just haven't got around to adding it yet. There's a very simple calculation inside of Ahrefs. A very, very, very easy way of doing this is to open up Ahrefs for a site. And I'm doing site-wide right now, but obviously you can do a specific page as well. And go over to the referring domain section, click 1 year. right? You can do less than this, but 1 year is an easy calculation. And all you want to do is how many links do they have at the beginning of the year, 575 referring domains, and how many do they have at the end of the year, 1,498. So what is the difference here? It's 1,498 minus 1,498 minus 575 is 923, okay? We want to take that, because obviously that's the number of growth over an entire year, divide that by 12, and on average, this site is doing really, really well. They're building around 77 referring domains every single month, which is quite a significant amount. Meaning that if you wanted to compete with these, you need to build around 76 every single month, or 77 every single month, right? So we say 77 divided by 30, you need to build on average 2 to 3 links every single day, again, referring domains, if you want to compete with this site. Again, that's not just for the specific page, that is just the overall website. And if I was doing this properly, I'd actually look at a specific page and say how much should I build to this specific page on a month-to-month basis. So by using this link gap analysis, it helps us determine things like what links to build, how many of them to build, how fast, anchor text, all that good stuff there. It also covers the destinations, where should we point these links to. And again, use your keyword research here to determine which pages you want to focus on, then you do link gap analysis for them, and then you decide, okay, do I need to build links to this page, or is it unnatural and instead I need to build links to other pages, again, using the link gap analysis. Next up, we need to cover what types of links should you focus on. And we talked a little bit about this when it comes to relevance and things like that, but also let's really dive deeper into how exactly you're going to build these links and what types of links there are to build, right? So again, going back to what we covered in the previous video, you have the option of building them, buying them, asking for them, or earning them. And what I actually recommend is realistically a combination of all of the above, or as much as you can really do, because obviously most people don't have the resources to do every single one of them. So let's explain how exactly you do each one of these one by one. So first up is building them. And here's some ideas that you start with building your own links. And again, I actually recommend doing this. Number one is start with your brand's social profiles. And you create social profiles on sites like Facebook, maybe Pinterest, Instagram, maybe LinkedIn, whatever makes sense for your business specifically. But when you're creating and setting up and optimizing these profiles, include a link to your website. Now, these are absolutely no-follow links, and they're not really passing any benefits. They're not really going to help you rank better, so don't go and build like 500 of them. It's not going to work. But what it will do is establish you as an entity, as a real business, as a real brand. And frankly, if you don't have these, it's a little bit unnatural and says quite a lot about the insignificance of your website. So it's a good starting point just to get links from these basic social profiles. You can also, and I'd recommend this in almost all cases, especially if you're a local business, but honestly, even if you're an e-commerce store, even an affiliate site really, is to submit your website to business directories. This adds location relevance. Now, this can be location relevance in the sense that here's our address, we're a real business located at this address, but it also just be location relevance for the overall country. And if you're building links from .com websites and you're based in the UK or you're based in New Zealand, then you can get a bunch of links from actual .co.uk or .co.nz websites by signing up to business directories and creating a profile listing and getting a link from them. Again, in many cases, these may be no follow, and in many cases, they're just very, very weak links. But again, it's not about power and authority here, it's about trust and relevance, right? So again, authority, relevance, and trust we're trying to build here. You can also use forums, Reddit, and other user-generated content sites, and they can be really, really good for getting traffic. Again, they're probably going to be no-follow links, they're probably going to be very weak links, but again, getting that initial trickle of traffic going to your site as a brand new website can be very, very effective, and these sites can provide a ton of traffic. As for buying links, it's really, really easy to find webmasters that will accept payment rather than try and convince them in ways to explain later to give you a link. It's much easier just to email them and just ask them if you can give them money if you accept payment for a guest post or anything on the site or creating content on the site. It's way, way easier to do that than it is to, again, try and convince them in other ways. But it's even easier, again, to pay a service that does that for you. And all those guest posting services and everything you see that sell links for, you know, $150, $200, $300, $400, they all pretty much do this for you. They basically reach out to sites, find sites that accept payment, i.e. the first step here, and then basically just broker that deal for you and get you a link placed on their website. So that's an even easier option if you really don't want input in this and you really don't want to scale up an outreach team, because that's really what you have to do, and that you have to send, you know, 100, 200, 300 emails a day and try and find these sites that accept links and then pay them money and negotiate all the details. Again, if you're going through that approach of buying them, or even just asking for them in other ways and convincing them in other ways. You can also, for personal projects, as mentioned previously, you can have a play around with age domains, whether you want to use that for PBNs, whether you want to use this for your own site itself, or whether you use this for like 301 redirecting it into your money site. Again, these are fun experiments, but it's not something you should do on a site that you actually care about, and it's absolutely not something you want to do about on any client site under really any circumstances. Okay, I just would not recommend that unless the client is in some really, really dirty niche and they're down to just mess around and do dodgy things like this at a massive risk, and they understand those risks. Okay, it's not something I'd recommend, but it is a lot of fun to play around with. You also have, again, asking for them. And this is where you can use things like guest posting and skyscraper technique and broken link build and digital PR. And honestly, there's a ton of videos, there's a ton of screenshots, a ton of blog posts, people sharing examples of how to do this. Let me just grab a few just so you understand this. But as mentioned previously, the basic idea is you email them and you ask for a link, right? And again, this could be tied in with the buying them option, where you email them and ask them if you can pay for a link. Or it could be some examples like we'll show right now. So here's an example for guest post outreach, and you can read this for yourself basically, where they're just suggesting, I have some ideas for writing a guest post for your website, here's some topic ideas for you. Now, if you read this blog post, they're just trying to make this fun and interesting and trying to incentivize them, right? Because you can either incentivize them with money, as we mentioned previously, or you can incentivize them, you can see what they're doing here. So they're offering a link from a different website. They're offering a mention in their newsletter and social media channels with around 10,000 followers. Again, hyping this up a little bit. They're offering a trial of their product, which is kind of crappy, to be honest, like a crappier version of Woodpecker. No offense, Lemless, I just don't like their tool. Their interface especially is really, really, really annoying. And also just making this whole thing like nice and fun and everything, because again, people get these emails daily, probably 10, 20, 50, like literally they get so many of them asking for guest posts and stuff like this that it really sucks. Okay, so they're just trying to make this a little bit more entertaining and fun. This example, again, credit to Lemless, which is where I got this guest post outreach example from. Another example here from Ahrefs. You can see here, this is a broken link building approach here. So basically they're emailing them and saying, hey, I found this link here on this page that doesn't exist anymore. It's broken, right? And then they mention we actually have another piece of content about this. So you see here, we actually have a similar guide to link quality, penalties, and bad links here. It might make a nice replacement, right? So you're just offering a replacement and also simultaneously actually helping them out, because maybe they don't want to link to your website, but either way, you're still adding value, you're still helping them out by pointing out that this link is broken. So again, when you're asking them, you're going in with some form of incentivization. It could be money, it could be a link back to their website, it could be promoting a brand, anything like that. It could be just helping them get rid of a broken link on their site and helping out their users and potential SEO things, probably not really from just a single broken link. Or it could just be anything else, right? But your point is you want to incentivize them and not to say, hey, can you link to my website? It's not going to be an effective technique. Here's another example here for this skyscraper technique, right? And what they're basically doing is saying, hey, I noticed that you linked to this article right here. I love the article, blah, 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 but I thought it could be better, so I made a better piece, here it is. Then if you read a little bit further, they say, you may want to consider linking to my article from your page. So what are they doing here? And credit here to David Valance. Well, they're just again doing the skyscraper technique. So, hey, you like this skyscraper? Well, mine is bigger over here. You may want to link to me instead of them, right? Or even on top of linking to them, right? You're just suggesting that while their content is good, mine is better. And obviously this requires we'll actually have a better piece of content. Otherwise, it's not going to work very, very well. But if you do create that amazing piece of content, this is absolutely a great technique. And as you can see here, it's relatively simple. But again, as with the previous examples, you want to try and make this a little bit entertaining, a little bit fun, because again, people get these emails every single day. One fun example for you guys, this one is from Jason I don't know how he says his name, doesn't matter. And you can see here, he's basically just doing a typical sort of guest post type thing where he's saying, hey, I've written something that I believe will be more interesting for your users rather than mine. I'm sending over the draft for you. The topic is blah, 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 blah. Let me know your thoughts, right? So basically it's a typical guest post type offer, but he's already written the content. This is much, much, much more manual, you know? It's not like, hey, I have some ideas for you, would you be interested in it? He's literally written the guest post already and he's suggesting it to them for his users rather than for his own website. Again, this is just a typical sort of guest post offer, but way, way more work. So you can do this, but it's way more work. Normally, people do something similar to this approach, where here's some topic ideas, but they're not actually going to write it yet because, well, then they can't do much outreach, right? Unless they're pitching the same story to like 10 different people. But usually, when you do an approach like this, you get a way better response rate because, again, it's super personalized and the content presumably is a really good fit for their audience, right? So in short, if we just sum up the strategy, it's create a linkable asset. A linkable asset is just a really good piece of content or a tool or something like that that is engaging for webmasters to link to. Not necessarily for your typical reader, but it needs to be really compelling for another webmaster to want to link to this as being helpful for whatever reason. Then you want to incentivize them. This can be money, but it could also be links, publicity, mentions, or really even just helping out their visitors because you have a really, really good resource, right? But you need to incentivize them in some way, and then you want to ask them. Right, so you create the linkable asset, you decide the incentive, you define the incentive, and then you ask them to link to it. It's very, very, very simple, and people have endless videos, tutorials, examples, and if you can find all of them in a quick Google search. I've just showed a few here. Realistically, it's just practice. And it's practice at writing good copy, and it's practice emailing people and just seeing how well you can build those relationships, as in just being engaging, creating, again, good linkable assets, incentivize them in a good way, and then just asking enough people. It's relatively simple, right? So how exactly do you create these linkable assets? Well, that's really the next section, which is earn the links, right? So this ties in very, very well. The first thing here you can see is create epic linkable content. So if you want to earn links, it's not good enough just to create really, really good content because maybe the content is great, but the only people reading this are people that don't own websites, right? So yeah, great, they love the content and maybe even share it on social media, but they don't own a website, so they're not going to link to it, right? So you need to create epic linkable content that is more focused on the people that own websites that will actually link to it. And I'll show you some examples of that in a moment. You can also, of course, interview people. Because when you interview someone, they're pretty likely to egotistically link to you and say, hey, look at this interview that I was featured on, right? People love to share this stuff. Again, it's ego, sure, but whatever, I do the same, everyone does it, right? So you get links just by interviewing someone else. So if you want to link for someone's website, and you have a personal website or anything like that, a great way of doing it is literally just to invite them on your show, interview them, then they'll probably, not always, but there's a good chance they may link back to it, especially if you're actually a good interviewer. You can also like do something awesome, and I left that blatantly open because it depends, right? So for example, I got invited to do a guest post on Ahrefs after speaking on stage at a Chiang Mai SEO summit, and then Tim Solo, I met him there. He was interested in the presentation and he asked me to write guest posts similar for their website and different things like that, right? So do awesome stuff, create really good content, have an awesome brand, do something great, and then you get invited to contribute. Likewise, if you do some awesome stuff and you promote your business and, you know, be awesome in general, then you also get links naturally, right? If you just create really good content, people will link to it naturally. If you have really cool products, right? Like one of the brands I started consulting with recently is an e-com brand. They don't know SEO whatsoever, but you have like 1,000 referring domains. And the reason they have it is because their brand is amazing and their products are incredible, right? They're really, really, really cool products that I'm personally a user and fan of. So they get tons of links anyway without doing any sort of SEO. They earn them by having an awesome business. Okay, so that's exactly how you'd earn them. Now, beyond interviews, which you can control, and the other stuff which you can control, but is slow and not really going to happen anytime soon, what you can really realistically control is creating epic linkable content. You can start doing that now, and you can combine that, rather than just waiting, you can combine that with asking them and really get a ton of links that way. So how exactly do you do that? Well, here's a few ideas for you. The first one is data and research. If you have a look at this example here, this is a blog post on Ahrefs. Again, this is focused more on webmasters, not necessarily on the visitors to their site. right? So if you have a look at it, it says 63 SEO statistics for 2021. And it's just a whole list, again, 63 statistics about SEO. Now, as an SEO, if I'm reading their blog and I'm looking for SEO things, am I going to read this? Well, maybe it's a little bit interesting, but it's not super compelling, right? I'd rather read a guide on like how to do link building, how to do broken link building, stuff like that. But for a webmaster, if I'm writing an article about SEO and I want a statistic to reference, this is a gold mine for me, and I'm absolutely going to grab something, and I'm probably going to say, hey, I got this statistic from here, right? Because when you're using statistics, number one, it's kind to kind of link back and say where you got it from, and number two, it's great to reference where you got it from also, so people know that it's legit and you didn't just make this stuff up. Well, as a result of this piece of content, they've received 554 referring domains. That's to this specific blog post only. They've accumulated 554 referring domains. Now, what they did here is absolutely genius because they didn't do any research or studies over there. They've certainly done that themselves anyway. They basically just compiled a list of all of them from different sites, including maybe their own, and put together a list of SEO statistics. Really easy. Absolutely anyone could do the same thing as this. Yet as a result of this, they landed 554 referring domains. And again, this is something that absolutely anyone can do. It's just compiling statistics and put it into one single resource. You can also do something a little bit more advanced if you want to, and you go out there and actually conduct your own research and studies, whether that's actually running your own experiments, or it could even be just like going and interviewing 1,000 people, 10,000 people. You can pay companies to do this. Say $50,000, it's not that much. And they basically go out there and interview a bunch of people, accumulate all this research for you, and you can use this for like digital PR, your own blog posts, and different things like that. Again, creating statistics because people love data and they love research. It's really compelling for other webmasters to link to and reference this stuff. But as a result of this specific blog post you can see here, 554 referring domains is pretty impressive. Another example here, this is a tool from Canva where you upload an image and it tells you the color palette of the image. It's great for design and things like that. There's also tools people have for like interactive maps, so you can click on different maps to see, I don't know, like the energy consumption and different factors like that, how much internet they use, how fast the internet is, how expensive a house is here. You have like sleep calculators that tell you the optimal time to go to sleep and wake up, and various different tools like this, right? All these tools are really, really, really good for getting other webmasters to link to you, again, especially when combined with outreach where you ask them. This tool specifically, looking at Canva, has 1,066 referring domains. That is over 1,000 referring domains for a very, very simple tool. And this sort of stuff, yeah, it seems complicated. You may not be a developer, but it's sort of thing you go into Upwork, you pay someone $50, $100, $200, $300, whatever, and they make some stuff like this for you really, really easy. And then you use this as a linkable asset to get a ton of links. Again, if it cost you even $1,000 for this, I would absolutely happily pay $1,000 to get this built when they've attracted over 1,000 referring domains by promoting this thing. Another example on my own personal site right here is a definitive guide. If you create a really detailed guide, as in definitive, as an ultimate guide covering one specific topic, I did here for private blog networks, then you can get a ton of links. Now for me, this is a classic example of earning links because I did zero outreach for this ever. In fact, the entire site, I've never really done SEO for it whatsoever. So I created a really, really good piece of content, and I just promoted this content by having really, really good content. I didn't really do anything else. And as a result of that, we've got 83 referring domains to this blog post, right? Not because I did outreach, not because I asked people, not because I paid people, just because the content is really, really good. And it's a full-on definitive guide covering everything about this topic. So when a lot of SEO sites write about PBNs, then they end up linked to my blog post because it's a good all-round guide covering the entire topic if anyone is interested. So that's a few different linkable assets you can create. And again, the process basically is you create that linkable asset. You don't just create one, you create multiple, because some of them may work really well, some of them may work not at all, and some of them work okay, right? So you create your linkable asset, you incentivize them by offering some sort of incentive. Yeah, you have a great tool, you have a great asset, but why should they link to you? You're gonna incentivize them in some other way, whether it's just a broken link, whether it's like, hey, we're gonna give you a shout out on our social media page or video, something like that. Incentivize them in some way, and then ask them, and then email them and ask them. And overall, all of these kind of combine together, and you realistically want to do all of these approaches, which is you want to build links specifically. You want to go out there and build your social profiles, absolutely. You want to go out there and build your citations, i.e. submit your website to business directories, right? And even some basic traffic-based links like Quora and forums, things like that, they can be great for, again, getting traffic initially. You want to buy them because it's easier and you get a consistent volume, again, easy, right? So again, Google don't condone this. Choose what you want to do with this. I prefer it. Maybe you don't. Again, it's up to you. But I think it's just easier to do this. You want to ask for them. Okay, so again, don't just buy them. On top of that, actually ask for links. Actually do a little bit of outreach yourself. Create some really good content. Then reach out and ask for them, like we just explained a moment ago. And also, as a result of doing this, you're going to earn them anyway. Right? So you don't really need to earn them, because that's just have a great business, have great content, do the other steps. But as a result of that, you will also just naturally earn backlinks. So with that said, that is how you build backlinks to your page, including the previous video we covered, all the different factors that go into it. I hope this is helpful. If you want to download the link gap analysis sheet, again, the link is in the description below. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked the video, again, please do me a little favor, tap the little like button below so we know that you liked it, so we create more content like this, and so YouTube helps us out and recommends the video to more people. Aside from that, if you have any questions, leave in the comment section. I pretty much answer every single one of them. And that wraps up this video. I'll see you in the final video in this module in the next couple days.